All right, we're back in Las Vegas for Amazon Sport Nutrition Fitness and Performance Weekend 2007. Just saw Breon Ansley win the Classic Olympia champion of that division. But now it's the moment everyone has been waiting for, the most anticipated moment of the year in the world of professional, to judge the Mr. Olympia.
And that has special significance considering, Dan, 53 years, only 13 champions. Will we have a 14th tonight? That's the question. I know that Big Ramy wants to throw his hat into the arena. Sean Roden's been chomping at the bit. Dexter the Blade Jackson. We got a good lineup here. This is not going to be a walk in the park for Phil Heath.
All sights, of course, are set on the reigning champion, Phil Heath, who comes in with 6 Olympia titles. He equaled the mark of Dorian Yates this time 1 year ago. If he's able to win tonight, he will have 7, which will match the number of Olympia titles attained by the great Arnold Schwarzenegger. That would leave him just 1 short of the all-time record. We'll talk about that down the road. But first thing, at our top 15 Mr. Olympia competitors.
Rolly Winkler up all the way from Carousel. Rolly actually came on the scene by winning the Amateur Arnold Classic. He's since gone on to win over in Finland. He's won a few different competitions on the road, continually just getting bigger every single year. The one thing that we have to be careful of is losing the definition. And that's what's been his crutch, is that on that stage he's carrying so much muscle, the detail sometimes get lost in that body.
Well, Rolly competed 8 times last year, kept really busy, placed 7th twice here now at the Mr. Olympia. But like you said, this is a guy who, when he's on, he is on.
Absolutely.
But there's a lot of margin for error. Some people have described those 2 arms that you're looking at there as 2 of the greatest arms this sport has ever seen. Now, that's, of course, up for debate, but nonetheless, Rolly Winkler is very dangerous.
Nobody's going to argue about those arms. Those are very swollen. They just don't have the separation. And again, he's one of those bodybuilders, the more he poses and starts to see the enormous amount of muscle, very thick shoulders. Those arms are world class. Those legs are just slabs. His hamstrings are there.
But Irma conditions, our good friend Mel Chancey, I know he's at home, he's been checking in, kind of giving us a report. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it. It's worth mentioning because Johnny Jackson is making, we are told, his final Olympia. One of the great bodybuilders of our era. He's won a whole bunch of titles, as Bob Chicarella mentioned, regarded as one of the strongest bodybuilders to ever live. And we've been debating years, but he's bringing a really nice package here in his final Olympia showing.
If he's nothing but consistent, I mean, the knock on Johnny has always been the lack of thigh sweeps, but those legs can squat. The complete leg development, the hamstrings are a little bit slight, the upper body, the biggest traps in the business and one of the best side chests that you're going to see. He won a contest to qualify to be here.
I got to tell you, this is a pushing 50 years old, getting ready to sell off in the sunset. A lot of times you'll see that stringy north-south, up-and-down look on a bodybuilder as he gets up there in age. Johnny looks really good. He's having a very respectable show.
He's a guy that he's traveled the globe. He's been all over the place. To Germany, done numerous Arnold Classic championships. And again, you don't get here by down, the quads don't have the sweep. He's still able to take out bodybuilders at their peak because he comes
a title earlier this year in Toronto. So Johnny is not removed from the taste of victory. All right, so we're looking at a former British bodybuilding muscle, and he's a guy who really, if he can find the formula, has the ability to beat a lot of guys.
Yeah, he won the Lou Ferrigno Classic this past October, I believe it was, out there in Palm Springs. So to get this, and again, the second time out, he's actually better than he was just at first blush. And again, this is a 2-day contest, so what we're looking at right now, they posed a little bit, got the bugs out, and then tomorrow they come back at their absolute peak. It's been a very consistent work in progress.
Well, a special shout out to those of you watching on another very convenient way to experience all things Olympia, and of course, a So thrilled to have the folks at Amazon Sports Nutrition presenting this year's Joe Weider Olympia at Nathan Diasha, and we're going to see all these guys back in 2012, Sean Ray, and he actually started as an under 212 bodybuilder.
That's right, and he actually won the snatch that title, and that's the one that Kai Green won out there, and of course Brandon Curry's won it in this level, but he's one of the more flexible, one of the nicer looking posers, and he's representing very well for the little bodybuilder.
And he's in shape.
That's what Brazil show is his conditioning. He does get in some pretty good shape. Look at the hamstrings hanging off the glutes there, but he's a little bit light in certain areas in terms of the muscle thickness.
I'd love to know, I mean, he didn't have to weigh in because he's doing the open, but
Zeke, fitness type guy, because he's very, very flexible.
Damn.
Known for the striations in the glutes. The back needs a little bit more thickness and a little bit meat on the bone because he does look slight by comparison to other bodybuilders. Conditioning is there for him, there's no doubt. And that's the thing, some bodybuilders look for...
Our head judge, Steve Weinberger, who, along with the panel, will take these folks through many times. Any bodybuilder, or most bodybuilders, can look great by themselves. You know, the real test is when they're stood beside each other and put through those comparisons. Should feel very proud about his preparation, because it looks like he did just about everything he could do to...
You can't knock the guy. I mean, this is the world's best, the creme de la creme, and he's representing the Czech Republic. I'm not sure. To Lucas.
Well, of course, all the anticipation is for Phil Heath, who comes in looking to the end, because Phil Heath will be competitor number 18, I believe. So he'll be the final athlete, as is the case last. But first, we're going to get a look at Lionel Bayecki, a guy who, when he came on the scene, Sean Ray, his career
was in much better condition. Again, the knock on Lionel Bayecki, he's big, round, and he's full, just has that very thick, a little bit watery, a little bit soft by comparison to Lucas. Hurt him as he gets up there against guys like Phil. The back still has this nice little film of water. That should be gone by in a complete, consistent 9-month run up to this show from January. He had to take a little bit of time off. And
a layer of water, especially in the lower half, and that's going to make it very difficult to compete with guys named of getting their physiques ready to peak at exactly the right time. But nonetheless, France should be very proud.
Good guys. They had the late Serge Nubret, and of course France has been Fado. We can't go with here and do it once again.
No, well, here is a physique that a lot of people have been waiting to see with great anticipation. He was, and we even saw here a year ago as Sean Roden looks to take out the champ, and from the front, Sean Roden is always impressive. Sean Ray, the question is,
as impressive from the back, and right now, just at first glance, there's a little bit of water hanging on there. He's got to control that mitts. Looks like he just had some food, and that stomach needs to come down a little bit. The side chest, he's always good in. The slight triceps is what really hurts him, but when he turns around to the back, and this is where this show's won and lost, you think of Lee Haney, you think of Dorian Yates, you think of Ronnie Coleman, and you think of Phil Heath. When you turn around to the rear, you better be ready.
And Sean Roden is a guy who notoriously gets better as the contest goes. So I would caution everyone to kind of hold your judgment and watch how this thing plays out, because these bodies change over the course of the night. There's also that 24-hour period that will wait until the finals on Saturday night. But now we're Sean Ray, we're getting our first look at the back shots of Sean Roden. That's the one that we knew would have to improve for him to take that next step. So I'll ask you, has it improved?
Well, I mean, not to the degree that Phil Heath is up there with and Dexter Jackson. And again, Sean says it takes more than just the back, but the lower back especially is a very weak area for Sean. And again, if he's not razor sharp, and he looks to be a little bit heavier than he was a year ago, and in his favor. Again, Dexter could be heavier and Phil could be heavier.
There's improvements back there, Sean. This might not be a he's lived up to his promise to make some improvements. And what shouldn't be lost in all of this, and about Sean Roden, we're talking about a guy who for 5 years in a row in top 4 at this contest. This guy's trying to put together a shot of being an elite bodybuilder for a long time.
And he took a 7-year break before he came back and won the North Americans to actually turn pro to take care of his ailing father. So he's had a very good run.
The king of the gym, Josh Lenardowitz.
We're getting our first look at Australia's becoming one of the most popular bodybuilders on the planet. He is the pride of Australia. He already has 3 pro wins to his credit. He won just about a month ago in Tampa, and then shortly after that, he horrific, tragic situation when a guy he was living with named Dallas McCarver, tragically and unexpected, called 911. The story has been well documented. Has endured over the last month is more than any bodybuilder should have to endure preparing for a contest looks, but it's even more extraordinary what he's had to go through to get to this point.
Mind is the weakest link when it comes down to this level of preparation. Some guys like Brandon Curry left his family for 3 months to go to Kuwait to the highest of highs in early August, and by the time the rubber met the road, he was there at a funeral service. So it's amazing that Tampa pro and had to endure a whole lot more than most of these guys.
And I know Josh was dedicating this weekend to Dallas McCarver. And by the way, for those of you guys who aren't up on the story, 26-year-old bodybuilder with incredible promise who tragically had his life end just a few short weeks ago, and it was really a situation that rocked the bodybuilding world. So Josh, we're happy that you could make it to the stage, and of course our thoughts are with Dallas, his fans and his family and friends who continue to grieve, cast the cloud over really so much of this weekend because everybody misses Dallas here in Las Vegas.
And Josh is representing Dallas, so kudos be long forgotten. And this guy right here, your reigning Arnold Classic champion, big man, looks like he lost a bit of his polish from the Arnold Classic. Definitely hit his peak back in March. It doesn't translate here. Classic and all that good stuff. This is the guy that could easily win this contest if he nailed his condition here in September.
But let's see how it plays out as the night progresses. Cedric McMillan came on, and he was viewed as a legitimate Olympia, future Mr. Olympia, and I think that moniker still holds true. Cedric has, if he's going to be good enough tonight to sort of crack through and get to that next level. But if momentum is such a thing, he is the reigning Arnold Classic. Momentum, people saw that playful on-stage presence between he and Arnold Schwarzenegger in Columbus earlier this year. A lot of fun up there on that stage, and he seems to really enjoy doing the business of bodybuilding.
He brought Classic back to this level of competition on the open side because he's a big man. He's 6'1", 280 pounds. It's hard to rip it up, and you want to see a guy ripped up on stage.
But I will say this. Cedric McMillan wants to be viewed in that top group as among the world's elite.
He is.
His highest Olympia finishes are 7th and 12th. So people feel that for him to take that next level, he's got to come here on this stage and he's got to put up.
Right. And it's hard to do when you peak in March. But he looked respectable so far. I can't wait to see him in the comparisons.
Jeff Beckham walking out with some swagger. He, of course, was your overall universe. It's not every day that we see a former Team Universe champion here on the Olympia stage. How about that?
Not to mention it's his first time. The guy got here on points. He did the business to how hard that is. So we don't expect him to be shredded. He is a taller bodybuilder in the lines of Cedric McMillan. You can clearly see the size differences.
Because the Olympia, to some guys, it's not just about being here, being in the All-Star game, right? I mean, this is where all the greats are. So you want to be on this stage. And for a guy like Jeff, you can be sure as he looks around and he's pumping up backstage and he's a few feet from Phil Heath and he's got Dexter Jackson to his right and Sean Roden to his left.
He loved Vince Taylor and Flex, and he liked the art of posing as a physique artist. And so he's biting off all those guys. But this sport, to places he never thought imaginable, all the way to Dubai and different countries like Germany and Australia. He doesn't have to win this to be a winner. If I have to be critical on him, of course, he's run out of a lot of gas. Earlier in the year, he looked considerably, but he could be a little bit darker. A darker tan will help him. And of course, he's one of the more flexible athletes. And when doing that, you see a lot of areas that he's not
surrounding beast. And Bob Ciccarello brings him out, and they call him Big Ramy for a very obvious reason. He is a massive bodybuilder with extreme proportions. He's got it all. I mean, this is a guy who is just loaded with muscle on top and waiting for him to put it together. And Sean, I'm going to let you break down what appears to be the most well-conditioned Big Ramy we've ever seen.
He showed up here at 305. To see him now at 290, dairy trainer Chris Cormier, the thighs are world class. They are huge. He wound up Dexter Jackson and Sean Roden. However, he didn't beat them here last year.
All right, now let's break this thing down. This is an impressive Big Ramy. He was 4th here a year ago. I think he's poised to move up the way he's looking. We're going to see how he compares.
A year ago, so I know that he's lightened up on the hamstring work. You got to be afraid to do that again. So I know he moved. Hamstrings are a little bit more delicate and fragile. The upper back and the shoulders and the arms, they're all. I'm going to reserve that till I see him standing next to the other guys. Right now, I've seen Ramy in person competing in several different competitions. And the only person he didn't beat last year was the reigning champion, and that was Phil Heath. He beat everyone else. It's going to be one of those things where we got to see them standing next to each other. But right now, Ramy is representing in, when I say big,
that we saw from the far more timid bodybuilder that graced the stage when he was first coming. And quite frankly, he has earned it as he looks to in Las Vegas.
And winning will do that. It will give you confidence that you never thought was there. Country, he's got a country on his shoulders that he's bringing over here. The army of oxygen gym.
Different physique here when Gerald Williams
Night and day.
walks out. That's a tough act to follow, but he's your 2000 show.
Yes.
Earlier this year, it was actually his Olympia day to the Olympia stage.
Yeah, team national champion. His arms are really his weakness, his flaw. He looks like an athlete. The very contest is way out of his league, but he got here the way that everybody else has to get here, and that's his next competition that he goes after for the paycheck. Being an Olympian is not be considered a threat, but we saw what Johnny Jackson did. He built a career, and he's competing in his 13th Olympia. This is a young man. He's got a real job. He does a lot of real world stuff, and yet he found a way to qualify, picked the right show, and he's here.
And I got to tell you, it's a real thrill to be able to do this with you and call the action. You've obviously been on the Olympia stage many, many times, holding the distinction of being a top 5 finisher 12 years in a row. Nobody has ever done that. And it's a sense for what this Olympia has become, because it's taken on so many different changes, so mmany different forms.
Here you got a nice blend of veterans with Dexter and like Lionel Bayek and Gerald Williams. These are young guys. Josh Lenarkowitz. Those are guys with bodybuilders. The Dominican Dominator. This guy's built a career on stage.
What's amazing is, as we look at Victor Martinez, who, by the way, looks much 10 years ago tonight, this is a guy that allowed Cutler in 2007 that he could have won that title. Years later, and Victor Martinez is still doing it. He's, of course, a former Arnold Classic. Victor Martinez has done himself and his fans very proud with this showing.
In years, Victor was sitting in a jail cell on immigration issues for almost 7 or 8 months. A man and rebuilt his body. Not only that, but he came back and he started winning. I mean, he won the Baltimore Pro Championships. He won. Talk about a guy that's had adversity thrown at him and just shoves it off and keeps coming back. That 2007. I know Berto Fox in '83. He got 5th place. Mike Mincer in Australia, never the same after Arnold. This guy came back.
We try to get to Victor earlier and see if he would give us some kind of sense for how many more years he wants to continue doing this. But for Victor Martinez, I will tell you this, and I've covered hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of bodybuilders. Victor Martinez has, we're gonna look at a guy who's a bit of a wild card tonight. Brandon Curry is extremely reshaped his entire approach to training, and he is a guy who has proven that when he gets it together, he has the ability to win any show he enters. Olympia top 6 finish.
And this guy's 5'6", 252 pounds. I believe when he turned pro, he had 17 over in New Zealand, and he added the Arnold Classic Brazil title, and I believe he won over in Curry that we've seen on this Olympia stage. Father of 4, married to an IFBB pro bikini for Brandon Curry.
Well, he's on a bit of a winning streak. You know, he's won his last 2 contests. And you kind of just summed up his whole story. He's become one of the hottest properties in the business. His story is very reminiscent of the Dexter Jackson story from a few years ago when we kind of thought Dexter was done. We thought his best years were behind him. And then all of a sudden, he kind of revisited his approach, changed some things up. Now he's back, and Brandon Curry has a chance.
His legs were his weak points, and they've actually come up. They haven't caught to the upper body, but they have come up.
Masters Olympia. He's now has 6 pro wins to his credit. He was 5th here a year ago, kind of snuck up on everybody, but you can be sure, Sean Ray, that he isn't sneaking.
I don't know where he can put any more muscle on his frame, and mind you, Brandon Curry outweighs him. And this guy looks, you can't put another pound on him. I know that he's, I think, 5 pounds. See the comparisons, because by himself, there's nothing more that he can put on his frame.
And Sean Roden and Phil Heath, his name didn't always come up. To remind everyone, William Bonac has all the tools to challenge for this title. And I'll be clear about that. He's got the tools to challenge. His body might not be as pretty as Phil Heath. He might not be able to get as hard as Dexter Jackson, but from is extremely impressive.
And he's very strong, representing the Netherlands. Williams, the only knock on William, I think, space between the pecs and the waistline, which makes him look a little bit boxy at times, but he is the official new giant killer as it relates to the Olympia stage. Big arms, ripped pecs.
From the USA, Michael Lockett.
Events, one Chicago and Vancouver, and he is now here at the Olympia in Las Vegas, where this is a guy who future threat in this sport. He's got a lot of things going for him.
Well, if he picks the right show. Right now, I think he's got to work. His strength right now is his calves and his hamstrings, that separation between the leg on the side, but then you turn around and you lose the hamstring. So from the side, it looks a little bit more representative. The back, again, this is a you look there, but when he opens up the back, the detail kind of is not there. That's where he's got to work on. That's been his definitely, he's showing the world that he's one of the best in the world, but what he's got to do to really the quadricep, more meat on the bone in the back area, and I think he's doing very well for what he has.
When you start talking about picking apart a physique like this, which is extremely good, and this. That's how far some of these top-tier guys have become, where a guy like Michael Lockett walks out there, and it's just hard for him to compare at that level.
Absolutely.
Jackson.
All right, well, you are looking at the most years removed from nearly winning an Olympia title. Dexter Jackson, and right now on this stage, not just as a participant, but as a bona fide, legitimate contender.
He's a top 6 competitor no matter what happens on this stage. Has the genetics, and you just have it or you don't. I don't see the drop off. Usually when you get older, you start seeing guys dropping off. Dexter seems to
he's got that signature dense grainy muscle that has been his calling card. It's what sort of has helped earn him the title. The uncanny ability to come in shape almost every time he walks on stage. All the talk this year, and Dexter was as heavy as, what, 260 pounds at points throughout this year?
Yeah.
And the question is, are you seeing that added size translate here tonight?
I'm definitely not seeing a diminish to expect from Dexter. The calves are never going to be what they should be, but he still finds a way. He does the best with what he has to work with, better than anybody else, which is why he's still here.
Man.
4 years ago, Max Charles won himself a USA title, of course the same title held by our reigning champion Phil Heath. He has now
yeah, he was actually leading Dallas McCarver right behind Brandon Curry in the Australia show before Dallas had some complications. Mac, you love it, but at the same time it doesn't translate physically, and right now I'm sure Max is looking forward to a nice long off season. He said his preparation towards the tail end of September.
And performance weekend, we are going through our first look at our 18 Mr. Olympia competitors. Dan Solomon, I'm defending reigning champion Phil Heath, and Phil, as he looks to equal the mark of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger and pick up a 7th Sandow Trophy. Phil is able to bring to the stage what we know he can. It almost becomes a foregone conclusion. Having said of Phil is sort of what we're all waiting for, and I got to be honest with you, I think this contest goes beyond those two.
To be competitive, and we've seen him much harder, much more, especially in the spring. So Max is going to be along for the ride here tonight. But yeah, all eyes are on Mr. Consistency, and that would be
The Gift, Phil Heath.
Sean, 11-year debut. He wowed the crowd. It was a victorious debut. He won a week later in New York. He has since gone on to win the Olympia 6 times, and tonight he's gunning to assess this version of Phil Heath.
It was a long time ago, Dan. Phil has done, and mind you, he didn't wake up and become Mr. Olympia overnight. He put in the work. He won that Las Vegas, and he's plotted his way. I believe he started off in the Mr. Olympia not as Mr. Olympia. He was 4th place. And again, from the back, this is where these shows are won and lost. That back, I haven't seen anybody matching him in this.
Yeah, it really is a winning formula. It's just a level of dimension that most guys just really in the history of the sport have been able to bring to the stage. It is eye-popping, jaw-dropping muscle as Phil Heath gets the crowd behind him, and it's really fun watching Phil sort of evolve as a professional. The way he takes the stage, the way he commands this trip for Phil Heath, and he's here to continue his reign atop the sport. But make no mistake about it, each year it's a different look for Phil.
Olympia champion Phil Heath.
All right, we're going to go ahead and throw it to Carla Sanchez, who's with our...
I appreciate it.
All right, we're back, and we're continuing prejudging round here at the Mr. Olympia. It is a night of champions so far. We have crowned 3. Breon Angeli, the Classic Physique champion. Sydney Gillen is your champion of the 2017 Figure Olympia, and we are going to tomorrow night's finals. But first things first, we have to of comparison, and you can be sure Steve Weinberger is going to make these gentlemen work.
I mean, Steve can look at these guys pretty much like I can, Dan, and know who's out. The fans are definitely interested in seeing their fan favorite standing next to the better guys. I just didn't see anybody stand up to him from the back. I want to see what they look like next to him in the front. Phil looked a little bit heavy in the midsection. Be acutely aware that that midsection has got to be tucked away, along with Sean Roden, when the time comes, especially can either out-muscle you or be in better condition than you. And that you look at your best when you're in those comparison rounds.
Now, Sean, just to be clear, what we're looking at here, this is not a call-out. These are the numerical comparison portion of the judging, where they bring them out. You're looking at competitor 7 through 12, and they are being put through 7 through 11, and they bring them out. This is not to be read into at this point.
No, what this does is give the judges one quick look at what they think they're going to want to see compared next to each other. And this is a very important round, although a lot of people think it's meaningless. The judges have to see you in these quarter turns when you're not, flexing on a double bicep.
And by the way, you guys just saw portion of the screen, the various commentators. We are actually presenting the event worldwide in multiple languages. So we are full participation by all of our various partners, and really sport has become just an international phenomenon, and the fact that our friends at Amazon is an incredible thing, and I know the fans around the world appreciate it.
Absolutely, Dan. Supply and demand, this is how, for the knowledge, just for the education, they are tuned in. They're all paying attention to their health. They're paying attention to supplements to the world. It usually sets the tone for who's who and what's what in terms of final placements. Everybody
Steve Weinberger a short while ago over at digitalmuscle.com, and when I did that, I asked him about that responsibility, that pressure all year, trying to be in that first group. Right now, group he wants to look at, and you're going to hear it right now.
Called out 3 guys.
Well, you're not looking at surprises here. I think this is kind of the group that we were looking for. Brandon Curry did make his way into this first call, and I know that's something that he obviously wanted to achieve, but with Sean Roden and last year's top 5, a group that we sort of anticipated seeing, and Dexter Jackson once again assumes his spot.
Phil's not shy. With 6 Olympia titles at home on his mantle, and of course these guys are all nipping at his heels. But Big Ramy is serving notice with the shoulders and the thighs.
All right, so I'm going to ask you to compare Phil Heath to Mamdouh Alasbaye Big Ramy right now, because this is a key comparison.
That's a very close comparison. Apples and oranges still, because Phil's a little bit more genetically advantaged there. He's put together a little bit more pleasing. Big Ramy, or those thighs.
A little more dimension and depth to the upper half of Phil Heath's physique. Obviously, Ramy has the overpowering thighs. Of course, Phil Heath's thighs aren't too shabby either. So you're talking about 2 of the very best in the planet. It's going to be interesting to see how this thing plays out as we move forward, and not to be forgotten all of this, Dexter Jackson and Sean Roden and William Bonac, and now, of course, Brandon Curry arrives in this group.
They'll be moved around and shuffled quite a bit, but right now, Dan, I'm going with Big Ramy and Phil Heath as the leaders of this lineup. Big Ramy's too big to ignore, and Phil is the reigning and defending champion. I think Phil is appearing a little bit bloated, and that's going to work against him if he doesn't dry that up by tomorrow. But that's the thing, Dan. They will have time to improve on
key adjustments in those 24 hours.
Makes the difference in winning and losing. I saw him losing.
And I think so far what we know is Big Ramy is climbing the ladder. He's moving up.
He's serving notice, but I got to tell you, I think placement, I'm going to be curious to see what's going to happen after Phil and Ramy, because right now I got Phil and Ramy. So if that's my 1 and 2, I got
Ramy and Dexter, because Dexter out-conditions Big Ramy all day.
He does.
And, so it's funny because we're always, we're quick right now. We're jumping right on the Ramy train. But right now, Ramy, to his left, is Dexter Jackson, which brings a completely different look. So I think we
start to change them around. We'll start changing our appearances accordingly, because that's what the call. Don't know that William Bonac has the size just yet to stand next to Phil or Big Ramy. But Ramy does look a little bit flat. He could have a little bit more oil on his body to shine just a little bit. The shine, we're seeing the sweat come out. That's the water that you continuously under your skin. Brandon, he's not sweating. Big Ramy is not sweating. That's because out as much as they can. Phil looks like a little bit raw to him, especially in the midsection. It's coming out on the chest, shoulders, and arms.
Phil and Ramy back in line, please. Rolly, Nathan, Josh, and Cedric.
Dexter, William Bonac, Phil Heath and Big Ramy were sent back in line, which
not just him, it's the collectively, and
Sure.
I think that's appropriate. I was looking at the exact same thing. I mean, William Bonek moved up as far as I'm concerned. He was 5th a year ago. They took the top 4 and set them aside. Now, this is where the contest, it's a warranted situation. Sean didn't have what he had a year ago. Last year's first runner-up, you can still see he relaxes and the stomach is still, there's a little bit of distension there. And the detail in the quads, your bodybuilder than last year. And that doesn't work with a physique like Roden. And when you see the double bicep, it's just not. And of course, Brandon Curry has got to be one of the happier bodybuilders, even though he's in call-out number 2. This is a guy, this is his 3rd contest this year. So if anybody's happy up there right now, it's Brandon Curry. And Cedric McMillan, I've never seen him not be a happy bodybuilder regardless of the placement.
he's always happy no matter what he's doing, but unfortunately he is not going to do what we've been waiting for him to do on an Olympia stage.
Face just didn't look like he suffered, like, you know, and some bodybuilders aren't willing to suffer. Give everything they have to this sport. They're going to do the best with what they have. Cedric's probably been very busy after winning the Arnold Classic. I got to tell you, Dan, 91 I won the Arnold Classic. By the time I got to the Mr. Olympia, I went through the motions. There's a lot that goes with winning that Arnold Classic in March that you kind of run out of gas by September. The other bodybuilders didn't have that same disposition, especially Phil. He was well rested. Cedric McMillan right now, his shape is keeping him in this game.
And of course, the new trend with technology is these guys will watch themselves on the big monitor as they're hitting these shots. So they are watching this event right along with the rest of you guys here on the big screens here at the Orleans Arena. But I got to tell you, this is where it gets, like you mentioned, Sean Ray, this gets really difficult right now for the judging panel because there's not a lot separating. That's that elite fraternity over the course of years, that top 6 at the Olympia.
Yes.
And right now, it's very much up for grabs.
And there's 2 guys from this call-out that are going to try to move into that top 6. Roy Winkler looks like he's holding his own, but again, he gets better as he poses. That water's coming out, he gets better. Sometimes he forgets the stomach. Brandon Curry's a guy that can wind up cracking that top 6. And Sean, right now, I just don't see him coming up.
Well, it looks like they're going to move Sean into they're going to swap Nathan and Sean Roden. And Sean Roden's just trying to fight his way back.
Yes.
And, I would say don't give up on Sean Roden yet because he can fight his way into this top group. He is a notorious top 5 finisher here at the Olympia for the last several years. And so
that Nathan Diashe got called up into the center. He's a good little bodybuilder from the UK. Again, the lower back needs some work on it, but he's a very complete little bodybuilder.
And he is, Steve is putting that. When it's all said and done, the only complaint we hear is they always let me stand next to that guy. And I know Steve's doing everything he can right now to make sure that nobody. Right now these guys are going to hit him most muscular, and we're going to see if we can find some point of difference to separate these guys.
Well, it's a pretty big
Gentlemen, hit a front double bicep.
deal when you were 2nd in the world a year ago and you're battling to stay in the top 6. Dan, and that's a strong reality for Sean Roden. He's wrestling with that mentally right now because he has no idea what the judges are going to do with him as he's being moved around in this lineup.
So every year we look at an Olympia lineup and we'll say, who nailed it? And based on what we're seeing so far, if anybody were to ask me who nailed it, I don't know if I have an answer for him.
I don't know, and he didn't hold it in the transitions. Big run flat, could have had a little bit darker color, could have had a little more shine on his physique. William Bonek looked a little bit tighter than he did last year in certain poses, but not a lot of improvement. I know he's 5 pounds heavier, but not a lot of improvement on William Bonek. I think by default, he's moving up, and Roden is the one that's paying the price.
And if you're just joining us here at the Orleans Arena for our coverage of Olympia weekend, that all-important first call-out, the way it played out is Phil Heath, Big Ramy, William Bonek, and Dexter Jackson were sent back in line, which kind of gave us a sense that they are being looked at as the top 4, at least early on in the competition. So if you were kind of waiting to see how this might play out, Phil Heath, Big Ramy, William Bonek, Dexter Jackson seem to have the early look for those top 4. But my guess is Steve is going to continue to make these guys work. call-outs.
And again, Dan, I mean, these guys all won a pro event to be here, with the exception, I believe, on points, Max Charles. And of course, some might have wanted not to come into this contest. We know mentally Josh Lenarkowitz is probably burnt. On one occasion, he qualifies by winning the Tampa Pro, and he's excited about doing Olympia. The next thing you know, he's at a funeral. Max to gather up enough points to be here, along with Jeff Beckham. And of course, Johnny Jackson comes basically out of retirement.
There's some really good bodybuilders in this group. So it's great to see just the quality in this Olympia lineup, because when these guys are out there by themselves, these guys look pretty good.
Yes, they did.
And here we are looking at them in what appears to be a last call-out situation. But you just can't say enough, as we sort of process what's played out so far, that Dexter Jackson, at almost 48 years old, is back in what appears to be the Olympia top 4 again.
Right, and a couple of his colleagues. You got Victor Martinez. We may be seeing the last of Victor Martinez here at the Olympia, along with Johnny Jackson, both 40-plus-year-old bodybuilders who I don't know how much gas in the tank they have, because they're usually typically up there in the top. I mean, Victor's used to being up in the top, and this is not something that's a pleasant experience for Victor Martinez. Even though he's on that Olympia stage, it's not where he's customarily used to being.
Front lat spread.
And as a programming note, when this portion of the judging completes, we will move in to the under 212-pound division, where the now legendary James Flex Lewis will take a shot at another title in that division, a division he has dominated for several years. And we'll get to that in just a moment. So we still have a lot of ground to cover as our coverage here on Amazon.com continues. And these Olympia weekends, Sean, they are just endless storylines.
Absolutely. I saw 1983 Mr. Olympia, the Lion of Lebanon, in the house. Of course, 6-time Mr. Olympia Dorian Yates is bebopping around out there. You never know who you're going to walk into expos, and then you wind up here at the event. I heard that somewhere around and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, these are what gets people in the gym.
And you did mention Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's in attendance for tomorrow night's event, so we're excited to welcome Dwayne back of a new champion. So this sport has been become all about the stars. Arnold, I'm told, will be there, as you mentioned.
About how improved Nathan Diasha was, and I mentioned how Rolling Winkler gets better as he poses. 1 minute Sean Roden's dejected, and Dexter Jackson is better as he poses. 1 minute Sean Roden's dejected, and Dexter Jackson is elated, and now they're standing in the same comparison that's here. Feels like they have an equal opportunity. Standing in the same comparison that's here. Feels like they have an equal opportunity to win. Sean Roden was very vocal about coming here to take like nothing more than to walk off with the 400,000 plus tomorrow night here at the 53rd.
Is in the top
1,000 plus tomorrow night here at the 53rd.
Is in the top 3, but even still, more than that, William Bonac appears to be in the top.
And he said, look, take it to the house. Williams better than he was a year ago. Williams better than he was a year ago. It sounds like he may be serving notice. 5'6", 229 pounds from the Netherlands. With respect to the different types of physiques that we're looking at. We're looking at an off Sean Roden, older Dexter Jackson, a young, fresh up-and-comer in Nathan Diasha, and of course Brandon Curry getting a second here.
You know, when you look at these guys, this particular call-up, it's really hard for a guy like Rolly Winkler to fit into this group. He becomes the odd man out in a lineup like this.
Yeah, because he's got so much muscle. He's kind of boxy. He's got the big arms. He doesn't have the pretty aesthetics. He's going to be standing between Dexter and Sean, two genetic freaks. In the relaxed pose, you're going to see as they start to open up, Rolly will start to lose ground between these two genetic freaks. But Sean Roden is just a little bit too comfortable in between rounds, relaxing his stomach. I'd like to see him keep that stomach tight like it is right now, but he has a tendency to take long, deep breaths, which tells me he's not in the kind of condition he's typically used to being in. There, I think it's very hard. Dexter Jackson can stand it up, but Rolly, after that, Rolly kind of starts to fade in comparison poses.
But that most muscular from Rolly Winkler is damn impressive.
It's world.
Spread out, guys.
As if the stage isn't big enough, huh, Dan? Hitting elbows. this has a tendency to set the tone for the kind of money these guys can make in terms of their guest appearances, in terms of their social media. I mean, 1st through 10th is very important to these bodybuilders. None of them want to lose, but it means something to place 7th, 6th, 5th place in the Mr. Olympia, especially when you're representing other countries.
Well, one of the reasons why that 5th place spot is such a coveted spot is because that means you don't have to compete all year. Top 5 at this event qualifies for next year. So they're going to bring out, as we mentioned earlier, Phil Heath, Mamadou Asbaye, Big Ramy, and William Bonek for a top 3 comparison. And it would be reasonable to guess this will probably be our final comparison of this round.
It will be, and I doubt that tomorrow anybody's going to make the necessary changes to change what we're looking at right now.
Well, what we're looking at is 2 bodybuilders who have moved up. William Bonek, Big Ramy, neither of them have ever tasted the top 3 in the world, and it looks like that's in the future for them in the next 24 hours. Phil Heath is trying to fend off both of them and retain the most coveted title in bodybuilding, and he's going to work for it. Because you can be sure that as Phil Heath directs traffic up there, you can be sure that Phil Heath's going to have to work for it. But really, as you look at these guys, it's hard to imagine as Ramy is, as wide as he is, as thickly built as he is, with all that dense, grainy muscle and the clear improvements in the world-class conditioning that he has finally brought to the Olympia stage. People always used to say, if Ramy gets it together and comes in shape, is it going to be good enough to knock off Phil Heath? So I think that question, I'll pose it to you. Is it good enough to take out Phil?
I would not be surprised, Dan, if we don't see exactly what you're talking about. It's very possible. I'm not going to say probable. Possible. Steve Weinberger is a very fair head judge, and I saw Ramy over in Kuwait beat Dexter and Sean Roden.
And I'll tell you what, Phil Heath might be laughing right now. But Steve Weinberger just put the defending champion on the outside and moved Big Ramy into the center spot. You can read into that. We don't want to overstate it. But at the end of the day, right now, Big Ramy is getting his chance to stand in the center of what appears to be the final call-out of the day. At the very least, we have some intrigue.
Well, I'm not going to end it there. William Bonek might wind up in the middle, too, and give them all a fair shot. But Big Ramy, he's serving notice, man, and I'm not possible. Phil's genetics are far more superior than Ramy's. There's individual poses where Ramy is undeniably all up in his grill. And cannot discount what little William Bonek is bringing, because William is as complete as they come. He's just situation. Mohamed McAway, sometimes when you're small, you're the odd man out, and right now these 2 big men in Phil Heath and Big Ramy, this contest that's up for grabs as of tonight.
And it's a bit of an apples and oranges situation, and we're kind of back to that. We kind of moved away from the apples oranges debate when Ronnie's reign ended, when Jay's reign ended, but we're kind of back there now. Big Ramy's the big, thick, massive bodybuilder, and they're going to do exactly what you said. They're going to put William in the middle, which probably relieves Phil just a little bit right
look
now.
He's smiling. He's like, thank you.
Because the narrative has just shifted in that moment where now he's no longer concerned. But you know what? He should be concerned.
He should be concerned. Big Ramy's been coming for a long time. I got to imagine Jay Cutler, when he saw Phil Heath coming, I can imagine Ronnie Coleman when he saw Jay Cutler coming. Eventually it happens, and every dog has their day. But as I look at Phil Heath, as good as his physique is with those big overblown deltoids, his chest is a little bit diminished as my eyes keep coming back to Ramy in terms of being the guy that's going to be able to stand with Phil and battle with Phil. And we're not even talking about Ramy's calves, because they're not even really a factor here. His size, his shoulder width, the girth, it's something that you can't ignore on those thigh sweeps.
Well, the other thing you can't ignore is the fact that here in 2017 at the Olympia, we have ourselves a legitimate battle. We're not going to come away from this prejudging with a clear sense of who won the contest. Big Ramy has done the work. William Bonek is impressive. And Phil Heath is good, but he may have cracked open that door just enough to keep things interesting.
He left the door open. Tomorrow we're going to find out.
We're going to find out, but first, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break here as our coverage from Las Vegas continues here at Joe Weider's 2007. All right, we're back in Las Vegas for Amazon Sport Nutrition's presentation of